let's introduce you to this person called Jack Butcher, who started with this NFT collection called Checks. What he did was he created a row of, around 80 checks, just a single image, and I think it was just a black and white image, and it had 8 rows and 10 columns or something like that. So there were 80 checks, and he launched it at the time when Elon Musk had taken over Twitter, and Elon Musk had put this $8 fee so that anyone could have a check. Initially, what used to happen was that the company, Twitter, would actually verify based on your accomplishments or reputation or number of followers, etc., etc. So instead of keeping that power as a company, what Elon Musk said is that let's just democratize it. If you pay $8, you'll have a check, which was a revolutionary idea. Now, what Jack Butcher did was he took that idea and he kind of depicted it using the blockchain. He said, let's create our own checks. And that was the narrative behind the Checks NFT, which really took off. So he was part of this open edition concept, which was very popular at that time, which is in the beginning of January, February 2023. So he took only one image of that multiple checks. He launched it as an NFT, as an open edition, which means that you can actually buy any number of them for a certain limited period of time. That's typically how it works. You can also make open editions for infinite period of time, which is also something that people do. But in this case, it was a limited time period. And 16,000 people, more than 16,000 people actually bought that NFT collection, that NFT that he launched, that Checks image. And he had priced it very innovatively at the Ethereum equivalent of $8 at that time. So he ended up earning around $150,000 or so in the first day itself. And then after that, the project really took off. Then he said, now you know what, you have this open edition. Now, if you want to make it on-chain, because typically projects are off-chain, typically an NFT collection that you launch would not be stored within the same blockchain. The image would not be stored within the blockchain. He said, now if you want to store it within the blockchain, you can burn your previous NFT that you bought, and we will make a nice checks image. It had multiple color schemes. So he moved away from this black and white scheme or whatever he had initially launched as, and he moved into this colorful scheme. Now, what he did was he created that, and he said, you have to burn your previous NFT to come into this, and you will get an equivalent NFT with 80 checks, but it will be colorful. It will have some character to it, and everything will be unique. Each of them will be unique. So he created that. People started doing that. Then he said, if you take two 80 checks and combine it, you'll end up with a 40 checks NFT. And if you combine two 40 checks and the way you combine it is by actually burning it, then you'll end up with a 20 checks. Two 20s gives one 10. Two 10 checks gives one 5 checks. Two 5 checks gives one 4 checks. Two 4 checks gives one, I think it's one check, single check. And then two single checks gives you one single black check. So since 16,000 people had bought his NFTs, his checks initially, if you see around it, according to the calculation, it takes around 4,000 people, more than 4,000 people to actually create one single black check. So he coined it as an experiment. He said, let's see how many people buy and burn NFTs, because theoretically you can only get to 3 black checks according to the calculation, because you would have to burn, you would have to buy, combine, you would have to burn 4,000 checks to come to a single black check. So this becomes kind of like a game of status. People are buying, which is what it is, which is what also drives business in the reality. It's a game of status. So people started doing this. People started burning their 80 checks, two 80 checks. They started buying another 80 checks. They started burning, getting a 40 checks. They started buying another 40 checks, burning both of them, and then getting 20 checks. For those of you who are not understanding what burning is, burning basically means that you remove it, delete it from the blockchain permanently. And there was a mechanic that you could do that on Jack Butcher's Checks website itself. So this was an exciting game that was going on, and typically the price of the 40 checks is double of the 80 checks. Because you sell it and people realize what value it is, right? So the prices of the lower checks were much higher. Not exactly double of the previous version, but quite high. So it's an interesting game that's going on, which actually drove the whole collection. Now let's look at how it looks. This line is pretty cool. He says this artwork may or may not be notable, because it's a play on whether you're verified, you're notable or not. Why should a company say that you're notable? That's what he's trying to say. So he's saying now we'll take that control in ourselves. So checks began as an $8 open edition on January 3rd, 2023. Wow, 16,031 identical pieces were created. That's because 16,000 people minted them at that point as an open edition. Then they migrated that open edition to immutable on-chain artwork, etc. And he had a very good post on why it exists. So the editions, the 16,000 ones, look like this, because what he did was he said, I control the metadata. So it says artist controlled, right? So he's the person who was the artist, or his team was the artist, and they control what the actual image looks like. Because in a open edition or a typical NFT collection where the art is not on chain, what is on chain is just a pointer. If you have studied computer science, basically a pointer is something that's pointing to another object or a location. So on the blockchain is just the metadata, which actually points to, okay, here is your image. And what is there in the image is still controlled by the person who has sold it to you, by the artist. So that's why he says this is artist controlled. So what he does typically is in this edition, he actually ends up changing it quite a bit. And then what he said was that if you burn 2 of these, or if you burn 1 of this, you get to 1 original. That was his original, mechanic, as they call it in the NFT world. And these had different colors, etc. Right? So you could choose to migrate from edition to on-chain. So these are on-chain and these are editions. Now by migrating, editions are destroyed, but etc. And then the main thing is, the originals, as he calls it, which is basically his on-chain art, have different colors and different styles. So pretty cool looking. They can have multiple different color bands. They can have 20 different color bands, 1 color band itself, 80 color bands, etc. And then a lot of gradients, and then there's also shapes. Let's come to those shapes. I don't know where the shapes are. But basically you can also compose it, as he calls it, basically get it from multiple NFTs into smaller NFTs, smaller checks, right? So the value increases. So this is the same thing that we were showing. Just wanted to show you how the art looks. It's quite beautiful, but it's not really something that is so mind-blowing, right? People might even laugh at it if you don't really understand what's going on. Now let's look at how much volume it has done. Let's look at the edition items, which was his open edition, which was launched. Now he's changed, so he changes this quite a lot. He changes the metadata for all of them. So it ends up looking different every time. But if you look at it, each of them is now going for 0.57 Ethereum. So even if you do 0.5 Ethereum, it's $900 or $1,000, right? For each of these images, and there are 16,000 of them. That itself should tell you what the market cap is, or the market value of the whole collection is right now. So the market value is approximately, say, 1,000 into 16,000, which is $16 million of money currently is in this ecosystem. I mean, somebody or the other has invested pretty much. If you look at the last sale, it would be approximately this much, right? And this is only as of now. If you see the total volume that is being traded since launch, it is 55,000 Ethereum. Now, if I see 55, let's just say 55, 197, let's just keep it 55,000 Ethereum into the value of Ethereum, which is around 1,800, is what it's trending at right now. $99 million. Okay, that's quite a lot, quite a big sum of money. And out of that, provided the royalties were working correctly, because there's been some issues in royalties, but more or less, creator earnings were 2.5%. This is the beauty of the blockchain. If you're an artist who creates some art, once you sell it, of course, you get all the initial money, which is what he got, some $150,000 or so at the beginning of his sale, because he sold those 16,000, right? So let's see that also, how much he got in the beginning. He sold 16,000 and he sold them for $8 approximately. So he ended up earning $128,000, right? Approximately. After that, he actually ended up earning quite a bit more. because he created this whole mechanic of how do you burn the NFTs. This is just the edition. It is not even the originals, which he calls on-chain art, right? This is just the off-chain art. And here itself, the volume traded has been 55,000 ETH, which is 90 or $100 million approximately, out of which he earned 2.5%. So on the blockchain, what happens is that it's not just that initial piece of sale that you're selling, which is giving you the money. It's also every subsequent sale. So suppose I have sold 16,000 pieces. Now, those 16,000 pieces, suppose people have sold it off to 16,000 more people. Every of those sales will also give me 2.5% of the sale value. So this is the total volume, basically means how much total for all sales combined, not just between the artist and the original buyers, but between the original buyers and the subsequent buyers, between them and the subsequent buyers. What is that? That is the total volume, right? Floor price is the minimum price for which each of these has been listed currently by anybody, any of the holders, right? So right now only 2% of these are listed, 92 seem to be listed out of 16,000. Now, again, one more thing that we have to understand here is unique owners, right? It has 2,058 owners, but only 35% are unique. So approximately 3 per owner, three of the NFTs are being held by each of the person on average, which means that some people would be holding 1, some people may be holding 10, some people may be holding 100, right? So you can usually find that kind of a chart and distribution. And this is a pretty typical thing for top NFT collections, where you have around 1:3 ratio, right? The number of owners is 1, and then the number of items is usually 3x of the number of owners. So 2.5% of $100 million of total volume is $2.5 million is what the founder, Jack Butcher, actually earned within, probably, this was created in January 2023, and this is now June, within 6 months. So it's a quite an interesting piece of work. Now, he didn't just stop there, of course, right? He went into CHECKS originals. If you look at the total volume for that, 22,000 Ethereum more, right? So he ended up earning probably $1 million more from there. This is approximately like $50 million or 40 to $50 million, and of volume, out of which, again, the creator earning is 2.5% if it was enforced, right? Like I said, there were some issues on enforceability in NFTs recently. So a lot of the exchanges have moved to voluntary enforcement. But if you run a new type of contract, you have the ability to enforce it as well. So this may have run a new type of contract, I'm not sure. Now, Jack Butcher didn't just stop there, right? He became a very popular figure. Then he created another collection called Opepen, which, again, he did not even release the art. He just released the concept. And again, approximately 16,000 people bought it, and he earned quite a bit of money from there as well. And it is an AI-based collection, which we will discuss in a subsequent video. But here's Jack Butcher's profile. It's got quite a few followers now, right? So it's a way of actually earning money, building your brand, and going to the next stage. It's basically just like any other business. You need to create your brand. You need to do your marketing well. And NFTs are not dead. NFTs are just getting started. They may transform themselves into different forms, but we are still at the cusp of and the start of blockchain and Web3. And in a future video, we will explain exactly what is blockchain, what is Web3, and why NFTs are such a big deal in this ecosystem. Thank you for watching. Bye.